Hi everyone, welcome to this new video. Uh, now, this is actually gonna be interesting because I'm actually recording this the same day in which I recorded and posted, the previous video, about Iran being more moderate and stuff like that. And I'm actually already recording this whole BRICS video because I don't know, I don't know. I just wanted to do another mapping scenario. I don't know why. I couldn't contain myself. I couldn't wait for some of the next days. Also fearing that the next days I won't have time to do so. So obviously this video is gonna be published some days later. Not the same day in which the previous video was posted. Maybe I don't know, some of these next days. Maybe I don't know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. These are gonna be the days in which this video is gonna be posted, if I'm being honest. And this one is gonna be a lot more fun. Let me tell you that. Now, in the previous video, I mentioned that I will have done the BRICS dinner. Now, what is BRICS? First of all, BRICS is an economic alliance between, now, the name itself kind of suggests is, BRICS means B, Brazil, R, Russia, C, China. Oh yeah, wait, then there's also A, India, then also S, South Africa. But these aren't the only countries. There are also other countries in this economic alliance as well. Mm, we have Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the UAE, as well as Indonesia, actually. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that this scenario is already unrealistic because BRICS, unlike NATO, isn't a military alliance. NATO is a military alliance and also obviously contains some economic aspects, but it's mainly a military alliance. Meanwhile, BRICS is an economic alliance, and also there are countries, like India and China, who don't like each other. So yeah, this alliance, this will not happen in real life. Let me tell you that. But for fun, we're gonna, take a look at this scenario. So yeah, so if you hadn't guessed it already, this video is gonna be a World War scenario between mm, BRICS and NATO. This is, gonna be fun because, I'm also gonna make other countries get involved in this as well. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. Let me tell you that. I hope you have fun with this scenario as much as possible. Is it recording? Yeah? Yeah, it is recording. I hope you can hear my voice. Now, there's also some thoughts that suggest that Saudi Arabia is in BRICS, but in this case, I'm not gonna consider it. I don't know. I feel like it will make it more interesting. Plus, once again, I did my own research, I guess. Like, Saudi Arabia is kind of not really ratified. Saudi Arabia is not really considered BRICS in this case. So I'm gonna go with that if I'm being honest. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, this World War scenario is gonna be pretty interesting. Um, but this scenario already from the beginning is basically gonna be World War III because I mean just there are like countries involved in each continent, and from here we're obviously gonna be considering NATO. So I mean NATO is pretty self-explanatory. Who are the member countries? Uh, I mean, at least you know the names of some of these member countries. Of course, the most important one, like something like the US, Canada, the UK, France, and there are also some other like important ones as well, like I don't know, Germany, Italy, Poland, Turkey, for example, as well. Spain, and the Nordics, the Baltics. Yeah. So let's just color all these in for once, and then we'll begin with this scenario. Now, this war is like gonna be, begin between BRICS and NATO, so it's not like there's gonna be another. No, sole point of this is gonna begin between BRICS and NATO. So yeah, no outside reason involved. No Ukraine thing or Taiwan thing or even Israel thing. It's purely just gonna begin between BRICS and NATO. Of course, other countries will, inevitably get involved in this as well. So yeah, I hope I'm coloring the right members, that I'm not missing any country or adding any country by mistake. I kind of hope that. So yeah, let's color in, all of NATO here. Here we have it. Here we have all of NATO color in. As you can probably see, this is, already, World War III. You can perfectly see it here. And now, a front that is already, gonna begin is obviously, Ukraine, because, Russia's invasion there, Ukraine. So let's do the front lines, which are kind of like something like this. It's something like this. And of course, Belarus is immediately gonna get involved in this. I mean, Belarus is basically just an extension of Russia. Like, it's just an illusion, like an illusion of an independent country, but it's really just controlled by Russia. Russia used Belarus for invading into Ukraine, when the invasion began. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So we're not really gonna begin in Europe because before I forget, yeah, Brazil is gonna take out French Guiana pretty quickly. But anyways, now let's jump here and focus, on Europe. Now, I don't know like if all the troops are already mobilized, like I'm not really sure. But of course now Russia's gonna send in the entire military, so they're gonna begin to make more progress in Ukraine, not like nearing, I don't know, Kharkiv. Like I don't really know too much the position of Ukrainian cities, but they're beginning to invade, obviously. Russia's also gonna link up here with the Baltics, they also capture Lithuania's capital, they link up with Kaliningrad, and they begin invading into Poland, but it's beginning to go down since, NATO does have a lot of members, but we also do have, Iranian, troops from all these countries is coming in to help Russia. So we also have to account for so Lithuania is almost capitulated, while Tallinn is close to being captured. Meanwhile here, Finland, like always, are gonna, pull the, reverse card and begin to invade into parts of Russia. Meanwhile here, nothing is gonna happen for now in the border between Iran and Turkey because, mountains exist. But now we are finally, gonna begin having some other countries getting involved in this as well. And I mean, of course, this was gonna happen because they are already at war with each other. Um, yeah, that just happened. And when that happens, that's gonna happen. And then there's also you know there's also the Gulf countries at war with Iran about this. So yeah, you know. But actually, it's just gonna be only like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman are actually like I don't know why in this case they're not because they do have some sort of relation with Iran. So yeah, they're gonna stay out of this. But nonetheless, Israel got involved in this, and yeah, and the whole world is just not happy about this. And maybe there are also some other countries here about to get involved, but we'll see, okay? For now, what we do know is that, Israel joined the war, but first of all, Saudi Arabia, yeah, the UAE doesn't stand any chance. Yeah, now let's go for Israel. Yeah, yeah, this is probably gonna cause a lot of controversy, right? Also, this is gonna be taken, and just like in good old days, we are gonna be having that happening. Yeah. Also, we're gonna have another country coming to the aid of the blue team. This is Syria. I mean, the European Syria is basically aligned to Turkey. Its economy is now leaning towards the West, I guess. So, they want to help in this. Meanwhile, the rest of the Middle East, as I said, declares neutrality. Iraq is also itself a pretty neutral country. So yeah, anyways, coming here for Ukraine, Kharkiv is about to be captured, but nonetheless, Russian forces are halted, sitting here in Poland. We'll here, the thing has fallen, but at this point, the defense here is happening in Latvia, but not for too long, since troops are like just arriving from the east. Troops are beginning to arrive here into Russia, into the Russian front. Anyways, meanwhile here, we're gonna be having another country getting involved into this, and it's just basically Eritrea. Eritrea is, a good rationale, so yeah, they're gonna join this, and also they actually don't really have as much of a beef with Ethiopia like some people think. They actually kind of resolve their problems, I guess. I don't know, something like that. And but yeah, should other countries now get involved? Well, of course, because we gotta make this a world war. Now, we are actually gonna be having Argentina getting involved into this. I mean, Argentina's government, is really just aligned to whatever the US does. The ideology is kind of similar, just like the US, it also supports Israel. Yeah, it's pretty interesting if I'm being honest. And yeah, they're gonna go against Brazil on this one, and another country with a similar ideology, so Paraguay. I don't know too much about Uruguay. Last time I checked, it was actually a right-wing government, but I'm not sure if they still have that, so I'm not really consider that. Now, Cuba, Venezuela, I mean, those are kind of like kind of now under the like they're kind of blocked by the US. So yeah, I don't think they were gonna risk that. Guyana is definitely not gonna risk it because if they join, they're gonna be taken out by Brazil pretty quickly. Colombia does actually have like an interesting government, so maybe they're gonna stay out of this one as well. But another country they might join is Bolivia, and actually on the blue team, since Bolivia is actually gonna change its government in the last months, I guess. But yeah, they still have to think about this. Anyways, Brazil for some reason was actually ready about this, and they begin invading into parts of Argentina as well as Paraguay, but they are gonna be stopped soon. Meanwhile, here we have a stalemate reaching out in this front line. Meanwhile, here we're finally, gonna be having other countries getting involved into this. So, Azerbaijan are gonna get involved into this. Meanwhile, Armenia will declare its neutrality, while Georgia on the red team. See, Georgia does not actually, it's not actually Western. This government is beginning to seriously lean towards Russia and China, because they're afraid of what will happen if they act like Ukraine. So, yeah, that's unfortunate for Georgia. Also unfortunate for Azerbaijan was kind of now surrounded. I mean, they would have already been surrounded, but with Georgia on the red team, yes, just basically worse. So yeah, Azerbaijan, they're gonna begin getting invaded on all sides. Russia will also use Georgia to begin a small invasion into Turkey, but it's just a small one. Iran finally manages to break through and begins a little small invasion of Turkey, but it's not a usual. I mean, it's not like Turkey's gonna be taken out pretty easily. I mean, of course not. Turkey is a pretty strong country, obviously. Meanwhile, here, yeah, the Baltics have officially fallen, but this line is continuing to be protected and held up. While Finland is beginning to cross even more into Russia, but Russian forces are finally beginning to arrive, especially here in the area near St. Petersburg. Russia doesn't want to lose that. Anyways, yeah, of course, other countries are gonna get involved even more now. And now Mongolia is slowly gonna act just as a way for Russia and China to transport troops with each other because now China is gonna invade Taiwan. Yeah, let's see how that's gonna be met. Yeah, first of all, Japan is gonna join into this. Meanwhile, I mean South Korea, they could join the blue team, but since they now have a particular government, I'm actually gonna make them neutral just for fun. But North Korea, sure, they're gonna join the red team, and the Philippines, they're also gonna join here on the blue team. And Australia and New Zealand are also gonna join this war. Yeah, now Indonesia is probably gonna be challenged here in the Pacific slash Indian Ocean. Will other countries join here? No, I don't think so. I mean, if these countries join, they're just gonna get invaded by India, China, and Indonesia. So I don't think they want to risk that, I guess. And some other countries will also get involved, but some less countries will also get involved into this. But for now, this is how it's gonna be. As you can probably see at this point, this is basically, World War III. So yeah, first of all, Taiwan, I mean, they're probably gonna resist a lot, but in the end, they're gonna be taken down. Japan will begin its invasion of these islands, that they used to own, before the end of World War II. They're gonna make a landing here. And here in Indonesia, they may try something with the Philippines, but I'm not really sure since there's also the threat of Australia. So we probably just simply have like something like naval blockades just happening. Same thing here for the Philippines. They're feeling this, and Indonesia is just this, and they're just clashing. Yeah, no real victory there, I guess. Anyways, meanwhile here, the invasion here is gonna continue, but finally we are gonna be having some small US troops here arriving. They kind of begin, doing their job and pushing back, a little bit. Here, unfortunately, Azerbaijan are gonna get taken over. At this point, we do have Russian and Iranian forces linking up. The middle here, the stalemate is continuing, but maybe not for too long because some other countries here may join the war. Anyways, meanwhile here, as I was saying, Russia is gonna send some forces to push back Finland, and they're gonna begin invading into some parts of Finland, but not too much, because Finland is Finland, obviously. Um, anyways, now the blue team, wants to open up another front, so they can wipe out more countries. So we're actually, gonna be have Libya joining this on the red on the blue team. And Libya does have some like pro-Eastern rebels in this area here, so yeah, there's that. Libya joining this is gonna cause Algeria to join the red team and Morocco the blue team, while Tunisia will declare neutrality. So yeah, so now a new front has been opened up, So yeah, let's see how this is gonna go now. First of all, Libya's kind of gonna get invaded, because these rebels are gonna get aid from Egypt and the red team in general. So yeah, there's that. Meanwhile, Morocco will begin pushing into parts of Algeria, when Algeria joined the red team, Morocco kind of prepares quickly to join the war on the blue team. They're already, having aid from the west. Yeah, Algeria is kind of screwed, and there's also France. Yeah, Algeria is screwed. Mm, yeah, so now what's gonna happen? At this point, it's a soulmate. I'm pretty sure that at this point, like, there will be like some kind of want to make peace or something like that. But we'll see because forces are kind of arriving here in Europe. They kind of begin pushing back a little. This is also European countries. It's probably just some US troops. Like it's mostly the European countries here, and they kind of begin pushing back a little bit. Same thing for Finland. They push back just a little bit. So yeah, now they say they kind of want to wipe out Brazil. So yeah, we are gonna be having more pushback here happening. At this point, almost all Brazilian forces are pushed out of Argentina and Paraguay, but we're gonna be having a small incursion here into Brazil beginning as last year. And finally, the last country to join this war, Bolivia, they're gonna join it on the blue team. And they're gonna begin invading just a little bit into some areas, but it does serve as a distraction. Also, Libya joining the war does serve as a distraction, so now the Israelis break through and they begin threatening, well, Egypt, the Alexandria as well as El Cairo. So yeah, not good for Egypt. Anyways, so yeah, the blue team, this is what the blue team kind of wants to do. They want to like wipe out Brazil, those countries here. Once they wipe out these, they can focus like on Iran and Russia, and that they're also gonna be able to focus on the eastern part of the world as well. They kind of want to wipe out Russia and what's close to Russia, before going for, you know, China, India, these countries here. Meanwhile, what could the red team want to do? I mean, they probably want to hold on to their claims and then try to reach a compromise with the West because red team knows that they can't really like win this war. Actually, a huge stalemate is happening, which is what has happened in this scenario. But you can see this slowly but surely the blue team is coming out on top. Okay. So yeah, what of these countries is gonna be the first one to go? But first, let's see how what Japan has been doing. Great, they have retaken their all lands. Yeah, anyways, what's gonna happen with Algeria? Well, Mar forces from Morocco are beginning to go closer to Algiers. A French landing, is gonna take out some parts of Algeria. Algeria, they're gonna, try to push back just a little bit, but in the end, it doesn't change too much. And Algiers ends up getting a siege, and then it's captured. Yeah, and with this, Algeria fall. So with this now, they can focus on Libya, who almost, had their, capital captured. Yeah, but with the Israelis breaking through, yeah, some forces, some Egyptian forces are obviously gonna retreat. So we do have some pushback here happening. So it's now just, they want to push back the Israeli forces, you know, mm, as far away as possible from their major cities. So yeah. Mm. Meanwhile here, the US Pacific Navy is also fighting here with China and they're actually able to liberate Taiwan. But from here it's just simply just skirmishes between the Chinese Navy and the US Navy. So yeah, so no real progress is made actually. Anyways, now let's see what's gonna happen here now. Brazil, they're gonna be able to push back on some of these areas. But once again, this was purely a distraction since now all Brazilian forces have been kicked out of Argentina and Paraguay, and now they can begin an even greater incursion into Brazil. This one here is actually solidified even more, and yeah, Brazil, they're gonna set up a defense and try to push back on some areas. It kind of works, but slowly but surely, Brazil, they are falling. Okay. Hmm. Anyways, now Libya they're gonna keep pushing back, and at this point, Egypt sees that they found themselves surrounded on two fronts. Fighting a war on two fronts is never good. Okay, so yeah, Egypt are gonna like try to conscript as much people as possible, and initially it works. They also almost push out Israel out of the country, but in the end, it's just basically wastes resources, and now Egypt finds itself in a pretty sticky situation, if I'm being honest. You can probably see that this point Israel's events even more like this is probably also like Turkish Salary forces helping out here. So yeah, India and Egyptian forces are pushed out to Libya. An invasion from the Libyan side also begins to happen. Eventually, Alexandria will be besieged and eventually taken over. At this point, Egypt loses all its coast, Al-Qaeda is captured, and Egypt falls. I know I made it quick, but I mean, we have to end this war eventually, right? Anyways, now about Eritrea and Ethiopia. I mean, Eritrea they're basically just defending their coast. Yeah, so now the blue team, especially Saudi Arabia, they're gonna focus on that and but they can make the landing, but they're actually gonna make it here. And initially they're gonna get pushed back. I mean, like Eritrea and Ethiopia are pretty hard geography, so they're gonna make other landings here as well, and they also begin to cross into some parts of Ethiopia. Now, this is gonna be wiped out, but this is gonna be united. And at this point, they're also able to capture Eritrea's capital. But then Ethiopia is gonna cut off here. Yeah, you see, this is an eternal fight, because Ethiopia is not gonna surrender easily. Okay, so yeah, so there's that. This pocket is almost wiped out, but then this blue team pocket begins to advance, and so does this blue team pocket. And eventually, Ethiopia finds itself like this, and Ethiopia is now playing the defensive. They aren't sending any troops to the red team anymore if they were even doing so in the first place. So yeah, another country that's slowly but surely gonna begin to crumble is Brazil. They're now really losing their coast. Blue team forces are near Sao Paulo as well as Brasilia. So yeah, they're not really going too much into the Amazon. They're mainly focusing on these areas which are pretty populated, obviously. Mm, Anyways, what could happen now? Well, the US they're gonna pause for a moment their little invasion of Brazil, and they're gonna refocus here, and they have finally done it. That's right, the strait is now under blue team control. More specifically, US. Yeah, we're not gonna say that because otherwise I'm just gonna get. But maybe no, I don't know. YouTube likes just propaganda. Yeah, now I'm definitely not gonna be able to post this video freely anymore. Whatever. More landings are also gonna happen. Iran will be able to repel some of these, but of course they're not gonna be able to repel the glorious landing that was on this rate, which actually this landing just expanded itself more and it got even worse. Turkey sees this and they're gonna begin pushing back on some areas, while Russia is actually gonna be able to make some progress here. I mean, this is because the front line Euro, this one is just stalemated, but some breakthroughs are beginning to be shown, just slowly but surely. Yeah, so now the blue team is now focusing on Iran, and they are gonna be they're gonna lose all their southern coast, and yeah, now they're yeah, now Iran, just like Ethiopia, are on the offensive. They are able to defend themselves thanks to mountains. But eventually they're probably gonna fall. But for now, they're holding on, obviously. Anyways, now the blue team is going through Brazil's coast. This is costing a lot of empowering resources, but it is sustaining nonetheless. And they're beginning to close in on all sides, for Brasilia. And and eventually we don't have like the city just being threatened. Russell will try to push back around it, but and eventually it's just a lot of troops, and Brazil will be captured. But here's just a question of going a little bit more around the coast, and eventually Brazil is gonna fall. Maybe the government is overthrown. I don't know. You make it up, okay? So French is liberated. So yeah, now it's time for like I don't know, maybe Ethiopia ran, and then finally Russia. So yeah, let's see how this is gonna work out. I feel like Ethiopia is able to defend itself better than Iran. So yeah, how can we do this? Let's see what can we do here. Well, Turkey, they're gonna push forces out of this area, and they're gonna begin like a small, costly, very costly incursion into this area of Iran. They're also gonna be able to liberate the enclave of Azerbaijan. They're also gonna go around here. And this Turkey is not doing this easily. It's costing a lot of resources. In cases, Iran even pushes back. But unless Turkey does manage to arrive where they want to arrive to, and with this, some Iranian forces are forced to retreat, and most of Azerbaijan is liberated. Yeah, but Iran is also gonna push back on some of these areas, but nonetheless, now Turkey and Azerbaijan do have a tiny connection here. So yeah, with this, Iran is gonna force like to send troops here. Yeah, and eventually a breakthrough is gonna be done. Some forces go through the mountains. Well, I don't care. In this case, I'm gonna be in mountains, and they kind of begin to make spearheads, and stuff like that. And eventually the pressure is just too much, and they also force retreat troops from Azerbaijan, and yeah, and Tehran is right there. Yeah, it's a race of who gets to Tehran first. Iran, they're gonna try to like counterattack this as much as possible, but in the end, it just keeps getting worse and worse. And eventually, these forces are gonna meet up here, splitting this part of Iran, also closing in on these flanks for the most part. And yeah, Tehran is now on site, and eventually it's gonna be taken over. At this point, Iran just basically collapses. Yeah, that's another country that was, wiped out. Now it's time for Ethiopia. How do we do this? Slowly but surely, but they are still getting pushed back a lot. Yeah, but slowly but surely they are penetrating, but they're still getting pushed back a lot. Yeah, it's gonna be eternal, right? So yeah, the blue team are not gonna focus on Russia finally. Turkey are gonna be able to push troops out of the country almost. Same thing for Azerbaijan. Yeah, the people in Georgia, they don't want to be on the side of Russia in this war. They wanted to be like on the, yeah, they wanted to be on the blue team. That's all. So these incursions in Belarus are beginning to get out of hand. So yeah, Russia, they're gonna pull some troops in order to help out Belarus. So Ukraine will be able to push back in some areas as well as to cut some of these Russian troops here. Same thing for Poland. At this point, Kaliningrad is kind of, exposed. Finland will also be able to push back here. At this point, like we are basically just having, troops from the Americas. Just at this point, they're straight up just arriving a lot into Europe. So yeah, this one is a bit route is threatened. This peninsula is gonna get cut up. So yeah, all of this is gonna fall now under Russian control. Ace point landings are also gonna begin to be made in the Baltics, such as this area as well. First of all, Tallinn is gonna be liberated. Russia, they're gonna try to push back in some areas, but their Putin forces are able to hold on onto this tip, and eventually they go around, and eventually Riga is also liberated, and both Latvia and Estonia are for the most part restored. So now only Lithuania here remains. But on the other hand, Russia has been able to push back almost all the forces out of Belarus. Yeah, now it's probably another stalemate, but slowly but surely, the blue team is winning here, okay? So eventually, some Polish forces are gonna begin to cross into Kaliningrad, but really slowly but surely. So yes, so they're gonna leave the job for the other blue team forces to come from this area, and they're also, now beginning to liberate most of Lithuania. Now they finally surround Kaliningrad, and eventually Kaliningrad eventually will fall. Not quickly, but eventually it will fall, okay? Yeah, this video is being pretty large. I mean, of course, it's a world scenario, so yeah. Anyways, now we have all polish sources being pushed out, and at this point, we just have only some forces still remaining. Russia are gonna be pushing to Soyang, and this point doesn't really matter because at this point, Belarus is just exposed a lot, and yeah, the Lithuanians is gonna find that exposure, and they go straight for that, and they capture Minsk, and Belarus for the most part is done for. Yeah, that was a pretty stupid tactic by Russia, and now they're just bearing the consequences. And yeah, Ukraine will also be able to push back on this area. And now the front line of Ukraine as been restored as it is currently. Turkish forces also push out the forces here out of Turkey. Same thing for Azerbaijan. At this point, the invasion of Georgia begins, which is actually gonna capitulate pretty quickly since people don't want to be aligned with Russia. At this point, the defense of the Caucasus has been put into place, but Russia still can resist, but hold on to their claims here. So yeah, there's that as well. Anyways, an update on Ethiopia. Oh, a small push. Nothing interesting. Anyways, yeah, now Russia, they're screwed. I mean, at this point, they're just completely exposed to the West. Russia at this point, they aren't intimidating anymore. They're just, I think, so scared. So, yeah, slowly but surely, they are, yeah. Russia, they're gonna try to make some pushback. They're also going to Belarus, almost recapturing Minsk, yeah. But the more time passes, the more Russia is wasting their resources. Eventually, Russia is also gonna retreat from these areas as well, all into the defense in the Caucasus. Well, Ukraine is finally gonna be able to move past this front line. They liberate cities like Mariupol. At this point, Donbass and Crimea are the only things that Russia controlled in Ukraine. An update on Ethiopia. Yeah, just that, but hey, they're getting pushed back. Yeah, but slowly but surely they are making their way. So yeah, slowly but surely they're making their way. Okay. Anyway, so back here for Russia, the people, they aren't in support of this war anymore. Most people are now against the Russian government. So yeah, Russia, they're gonna try to protect this area. Yeah, but yeah, it's just getting worse and worse. And yeah, it actually got worse. Russia will try to reconnect with the city, but they just get pushed back even more. And slowly but surely, St. Petersburg will fall. At this point, Russia just asks this. Well, then the West is gonna send forces here, and yeah, there's that. And at this point, forces are also gonna begin to mm, push out of these areas as well. At this point, Russia, they're screwed, and it will be a matter of time, before the Latin forces just link up here with the Caucasus. They cut out this area, and they captured, all the important oil. And yeah, eventually Moscow will be on the siege of getting captured. Eventually, yeah, bloody battle will happen. Moscow will not fall to this city, but eventually Moscow will fall, and that will basically just signify the fall of Russia as well. So yeah, that's just what happened, what ended up happening. Yeah, at this point, the red team, they are. Let me tell you this, they're screwed. Australia will also now begin making landings into parts of Indonesia. It's kind of like Australia was preparing for this, yeah, Indonesia, they don't like this. Mongolia will actually surrender, and now, yeah, but we still have, forces, having to move to from here, to here. So yeah, China, they're gonna try to liberate some of these areas. But there are also some Russian troops who kind of switch sides. So yeah, now China, they have their capital threatened from this area here. So yeah, North Korea is gonna fall, but China is gonna be able to set up a defense for now. But it's not looking great. Okay. Anyways, here Ethiopia, they push a little bit more, but they do get pushed back on some areas. So yeah. Anyways, as for here, all of Papua New Guinea is gonna be taken over, as well as this island, and it's been Indonesia is just defending itself these three islands, and they're hard to penetrate for now. So yes, another thing is gonna focus here on China, and mm, they are really just using all their troops just on this front line here. China, they're gonna maybe push back on some areas, but Eventually, yeah, you know, Beijing eventually is gonna be on the verge of getting captured, and eventually it will be captured. And at this point, I feel like Southern China is more against like the current regime. So yeah, China will lose its east coast, and at this point, it's over for China. At this point, India, I mean, Russia is gone, so yeah, they don't really see a reason of fighting on this anymore. So they're gonna surrender. And at this point, Indonesia, yeah, they're gonna lose their capital, they're gonna lose this island as well, and yeah, they will too end up surrendering. Yeah, now it's time for South Africa. Well, they're gonna surrender, and Ethiopia is the last country left on this, and and slowly but surely, they are falling, but really, like really slowly but surely, like oh, that's a pretty impressive counterattack. Well, the West is gonna use another counterattack. Yeah, now they are really surrounding their capital. But they're still gonna try to counterattack. But they're also gonna get counterattacked by the West. Eventually, after a usually battle, Addis Ababa will fall, but they're still getting pushed back here. But slowly but surely, they're falling. Slowly but surely, slowly but surely, slowly but surely, they're falling. Right? Slowly but surely, even when Ethiopia, all the remnants of Ethiopia is this, they are still pushing back. So they're just gonna bombard the entire area. I'm pretty sure there's one specific country doing that, and so the country is not gonna fall quickly. Perfect. The war has ended in a in a blue team victory, in a Western victory. So yeah, so now let's go and take a look at this peace treaty. It's gonna be interesting, okay? All right, so I guess this is, the entire peace treaty. I don't think I have forgotten, any country that was involved in this war. So yeah, let's go and take a look at this peace treaty. Now, first of all, Bolivia, they're gonna get some land from Brazil, something for Paraguay, something for Argentina. France is gonna be also expanding to Brazil, and Brazil itself, will get a new government, obviously. South Africa itself also gets a new government. Eritrea gets a new government. Ethiopia gets a new government. Morocco gets some land out of Algeria. Algeria gets a new government. Libya gets some land out of Egypt. Egypt itself gets a new government. Well, Israel expanding a lot. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that not a lot of people are gonna be happy about this. Yeah, absolutely not any horrible stuff will happen because of this, right? So yeah, Israel, they take Palestine, they take the Sinai Peninsula, they take all of Lebanon. Saudi Arabia gets all of the UAE. Meanwhile, I think you can perfectly guess who is controlling this area, right? Anyways, Iran are also gonna lose some land to Turkey and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan also links up with its ex-slave, but Turkey and Azerbaijan now murder each other. And Iran itself gets a new government. Probably has monarchy restored, but probably something like a constitutional monarchy, I guess. Here in Europe, we have Finland getting all this land, including the Kola Peninsula. Estonia expands into Russia. Latvia expands into Belarus and Russia. Lithuania splits up Kaliningrad with Poland and expands into Belarus. Poland too expands into Belarus. Ukraine expands into both uh, Belarus and Russia. Both Belarus and Russia get new governments. We also have Japan getting their claims over these areas. And then North Korea is actually going to be given over to South Korea, so Korea is unified. Well, here as for like mm, Australia, they are gonna be like taking over like all these islands. I'm pretty sure like that some of these like could like I don't know this could be given over to East Timor, something like that. This could also be given to Papua New Guinea, but Australia could keep this area, or maybe Papua New Guinea will actually join Australia. So from like something like an Australian empire to also add New Zealand, and it's perfect. Yeah, we're not really counting that here. Of course, also Indonesia itself, they're gonna be getting a new government as well. And then, well, then India itself technically also gets a new government, probably a more pro-Western one, I guess. Taiwan itself is recognized as an independent country, but here's something interesting happened with China now. Of course, Taiwan does claim all this land, but the Taiwan itself China wants to like have its own identity. So there's gonna be this Taiwan, then there's gonna be a new Chinese government being set up, which is actually gonna get the claims that Taiwan wants. I'm not really sure if this like could work because I mean China was on the loser side, but nonetheless, it did happen, and this will eventually unify into just one wall Republic of China. Of course, the capital of this not gonna be here; it's gonna be here in Nanjing. And so yeah, I think this girl, all the changes, of course, down to world is more pro-Western, and I'm pretty sure that whatever pro-Western country remains will just turn to Western ideology, eventually. Also, speaking here of Belarus and Russia, Belarus is kind of left here, so maybe under permission from the West, they could, unify. Also, Belarus probably get a good amount of autonomy, so maybe something like this, it kind of looks better, but for now, Belarus is gonna be like this. We'll see if it functions as a country in this way. Oh, speaking of Georgia, they got a new government, and they also actually got back their claims of Abkhazia in South Ossetia. So, yeah, so Georgia now has finally a pro-Western government, and yeah, they actually introduced it into Turkey and Azerbaijan. Not like they were interested in taking them from Georgia anyways, and because I mean they knew that like people in Georgia didn't really want to like, be part of Russia, so yeah. So I guess these were, all the changes. So I hope you really enjoyed this scenario. I think that's everything that I needed to do. Yeah, it's almost an hour. So yeah, I'll see you guys um, in the next one.